How are you? It's a difficult question to answer, and a question that you might answer differently if you're asked in the supermarket, or if you're asked in a group, or if you're asked even by a parent. How are you? How are you doing? So my aim for this video is to support you to be able to answer that question. How are you? To check in with yourself. And I want to help you do it using this, a hot crossed bun. So this comes from CBT as a way of breaking down our lives into individual components, our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviours and our sensations. But you can use it with other modalities just as a way of encapsulating different parts of yourself and seeing how all of those parts are one. You see, in this analogy, you are the hot crossed bun, and all of you is the hot crossed bun. Let's pretend that I get this hot crossed bun and I chop one of the corners off of it. What is it? What's in front of you? Well, it's a hot crossed bun. It might be missing a piece, but it's a hot crossed bun. What if I cut off another piece? What is it? Well, it's a hot crossed bun. And in the same way, your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, your behaviour are different aspects of you, but they are fundamentally all you, even if we remove a bit to look at it. The other important thing to distinguish is that none of those individual bits in and of themselves are you entirety, which is important because we might have a strong feeling coming up with us. I am angry. We might have a thought going round in our brain, I am worrying. We might have a big sensation in our body, I am tired. Or you might have a behaviour that you do that's hard to accept. I'm an alcoholic, whatever it is. It's an important distinguishing that those behaviours, those thoughts, those sensations, those feelings, those are things in your body, but they do not define you. So if you have a overwhelming feeling, overwhelming thought, a sensation that's really taking up your headspace, or a behaviour that's difficult to accept or understand, that doesn't define you. And even that difference in language can be helpful. So for example, rather than saying, I am angry, you could distinguish it by saying, a feeling of anger is coming up. So first up, let's go and digest thoughts as one of those sections. And now might be a good time to talk about some of the limits of this whole analogy, because each of those sections, thoughts, sensations, feelings, behaviour, are a damn sight more complicated than just thoughts, just feelings, just sensations, just behaviours. Take thoughts, for example. Some of them will just be background narrative, the passive thoughts that bounce around in your mind. Some of them will be deep reflective thoughts where you hold into things and really consider. Sometimes your thoughts will interact with other aspects of you. They'll be informed by your feelings, your behaviour, your sensation. Some of your thoughts will be introjected, absorbed from your parents or people that have told you to do things, from school, your upbringing, from societal norms that you need to abide by. Some of those thoughts will be core beliefs that are really deep and in there. But all of these things are what we're labelling as thoughts. And like I said earlier, when I mentioned that not every single individual piece of the hot crossed bun is the entire hot crossed bun, you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts naturally buzz around, thinking is human, but those thoughts aren't necessarily real or even based on reality. Some of them have even been generated for you rather than you choosing to have them. And realising this can be a real game changer. It's part of the benefits of programs like mindfulness, because we realise those thoughts that jump around in our minds, some of them may be unpleasant or critical. They may be real, they may be predictive, but they aren't necessarily. And it can give us a freedom to observe our thoughts like a passive observer, rather than being ruled by our thoughts as reality. So let's pause the video for the first time. let's have a little break, and maybe it's worth checking in and saying to yourself, not how am I, not what's going on for me, but what am I thinking right now? What thoughts are there? And when you've thought about what thoughts there are, maybe ask some deeper questions of whose thoughts are they? Are they true? Can I control this narrative? What thoughts do I have? So I'm going to close my eyes. I invite you to pause the video and we will jump back up in 1 second. So secondly, I'm going to do the thing that no counsellor probably really should do and eat my feelings. Just like with thoughts, there's a lot of complexity to feelings. You may have, for example, seen those feeling wheels where it starts off with some core emotions, your kind of basic emotions, anger, sadness, disgust, anger, and then it gets into deeper things. So for example, you might feel anger, and then as you delve into it, maybe it's a deeper feeling of jealousy or of rage or vengeance. And then to add more complexity, it's possible to feel multiple things at once. Let's say, for example, someone who we had care responsibilities of passed away. We might feel a sense of relief, we might feel a numbness, we might feel really in mourning and the weight of that. Multiple feelings can be happening all at the same time. Furthermore, feelings are ambiguous and unique to the individual. We have words, for example, anxiety. We might think, oh, I know what anxiety feels like, but when a client says to me they're anxious, I feel curious. What's that like? How do you know you're anxious? Where do you feel that anxiety in the body? What does that mean to you? And there's actually a subset of the population who don't feel, or at least don't feel in the same way. Let's say, for example, we're in active addiction or taking certain medications. It can really numb our experience of our feeling. 50% of autistic people experience alexithymia, where you don't experience emotions in yourself or other people in the same neurotypical way. A common stage of bereavement, of grief, is going through a numbness, a lack of feeling. And I remember when I was doing my counselling training, you have to sit around in a group process encounter groups that I really love these days, but you'd sit around in these groups and you had to check in at the beginning, and I'd kind of interjected that unless you say how you feel and really get in touch with that feeling, then your check-in isn't valid. I'm a person-centered counsellor, and if you read what Rogers wrote about feeling, he talks about processes of change that clients go through, and getting to a point of flow where we are in contact with our feelings, however unacceptable or difficult they are. That's quite a late stage of process. So you might feel this pressure to be mega in touch with your feelings, and that might feel vulnerable, or it might feel like something that you can't do. It's difficult. And I want to say that's okay. I wish someone said that to me when I was in training. That's okay to not be in flow with your feelings. And it's okay to struggle to access them. Especially, as men, we can get told certain feelings. Anger, for example, and I've mentioned it a lot in this section. We can be told it's dangerous, we're going to beat someone up with it. But it's a human emotion. And anger is a motivating feeling that pushes us forward to make change. So when I talk about feelings, I more mean being in touch with whatever's coming up for you, whatever that looks like, whether it shouts to you loudly, so much so that it's overwhelming and you can't hear much else, or whether you experience your feelings subtly, quietly, maybe just the tip of the iceberg. I want you to be okay with it. And if this is one of those quadrants that's hard for you to access, it's the beautiful thing about our hot cross bun, because if we're struggling to access our experience in one area, we can always draw on one of the others. Are you ready to pause again? Let's, again, pause. Let's take a moment and let's check in with ourselves. How do I feel? What feelings are going on for me? And how do I know I feel that way? Let's say, for example, we feel anxious. You feel it in the stomach. Well, is that anxiety, or is it tiredness, or is it fear? Let's just be present with whatever's there. Let's try and accept it, to allow it, to notice it. And I also invite you to say if you're not feeling anything at all. You might feel panic or an absence of feeling, and an absence of feeling in and of itself is kind of a feeling. So, for another second, I'm going to close my eyes. Next up, it's time to feed on behaviours. The other bits of the hot cross bun very much make up our internal reality, whereas our behaviour makes up our external reality. It's what other people see and often how other people judge us on. But just like the thoughts, feelings, etc., I'm going to say that our behaviour alone is not us. It's just a part of us. Have you ever felt like you're on autopilot? Maybe you've driven to work but you can't quite remember the journey. And then suddenly there's a moment of realisation and you're like, oh, I'm me, I'm here. It's really adaptive that we can be on autopilot. If we were constantly processing everything around us, every moment, every decision, if we couldn't do things automatically, then we'd just experience overload. There'd be too much stuff to process. It'd be like learning anew every single moment. And so autopilot isn't a bad thing, but it can also mean that the behaviours we do can become routine without us paying much thought to actually what's going on for us. In his 19 propositions, Carl Rogers says that the behaviour is basically the goal-directed attempt of the organism to satisfy its needs as experienced in the field as perceived, and that the best vantage point for understanding behaviour is from the internal frame of reference of the individual, which is all a fairly long-winded way of saying that behaviours, even behaviours that we might view as unacceptable, strange, wrongs, behaviours that surprise us. We might spontaneously do something or go out and the next day feel full of dread. Oh, why did I do that? But all behaviour makes sense when you consider it from the mind of the individual. We can tend to feel more guilty over behaviours than we can over our thoughts or feelings. If we get some kind of intrusive or unacceptable thoughts, we might catch ourselves thinking it and go, oh, that's not right. But we're unlikely to sit there full of guilt, like I'm such a terrible person because I thought that. Whereas if we behave and do something that we later judge wasn't right, we can often be much more full of guilt. And so it's much harder with that quadrant of the hot cross bun to say that it's not us. We take responsibility for our behaviour. Yes, we might make amends, but our behaviour alone isn't us, it's part of us. Just like thoughts drift in the wind, behaviour can also drift in the wind. The other thing that came up when we ran this for a group of people in recovery is that we might take on certain roles, maybe a role like a parent. We might feel like an anxious child. We may feel like we are wanting to be in charge or subservient or to be an entertainer. And often these roles that we take on are less something that we are controlling as though we were role playing, but more something that can passively happen in response to people. And this again can be a way of checking in with ourselves. Are we acting or behaving in a certain role in this moment? For example, as I speak to you, where a lot of this is edited, I am kind of teaching, I can delete things if I'm not happy with it. Very different to how you might perceive me if we were talking face to face. So this one's probably going to feel like the most bizarre check-in question, but I'm going to ask us to pause it yet again and ask ourselves, how are we behaving right now? What's going on for us? What are we doing? And you might notice judgment jump up in response to that. You might notice that you're really keen to alter, change, improve, remove behaviour. But let's check in with ourselves there. How are you? How are you behaving right now? And for the final piece of our hot cross bun, let's taste what it feels like to enjoy the sensations. And when I say sensations, eating is actually a really good example. There's the taste of it, the smell, the mouthfeel as it's inside and you're chewing on it. There is the texture of it. Lots of different physical sensations of senses are going on in the body. Sensations are what are physically going on in the body, and our senses are a real way of being able to get in contact with what's happening. But we also might be experiencing feelings in parts of the body, pain for example. Maybe there's a muscle ache, or we might have a headache. We might be experiencing a feeling of butterflies in the stomach in response to anticipation. Maybe you're scared and you feel a dryness in the mouth. Books like The Body Keep the Score talk around the effects of trauma on the body, how emotional and psychological things can impact on us. Carl Rogers talks about somebody who's scared of flying, and whenever they get near a plane they start experiencing a headache. Like, psychological things can present even within the body. As a therapist, as a person-centered counsellor, one of the things that often is most powerful when I'm with a client is if I physically start feeling a sensation in response to what they're saying. So let's pretend we are talking about something calm, mundane, something that shouldn't feel particularly impactful, but my leg might be shaking. I might be feeling a sense of panic or anxiety. I might be curious about that. I'd hold on to it, and I may even share it with the client. Likewise, if a strong feeling comes up, a feeling of anger, and I can feel it kind of because my shoulders are clenched or my teeth are locked, like, those physical sensations can be a clue of what is happening for me, but also what's happening for my clients. And in recent years, mindfulness-based CBT programs have become very popular. And one of the reasons for their popularity and also their effectiveness is because someone who is going through depression, the sense of agony, of anguish, of sadness, that might be too overwhelming to access. Thoughts, they may be racing. Behaviours, there might be a sense of confusion or isolate. What am I doing? Why am I behaving this way? Whereas sensations, those are something that's much easier for us to get in contact with, to notice what's going on without that sense of judgment. So what mindfulness does is we might sit and meditate and notice the feelings that are going on in our body, the sensation of the breath in the bottom of the lung. We might do a body scan. We might feel that there is a tension in the shoulders, for example. Ooh, I'm feeling tense right now. I didn't realise I was tense, but I'm feeling it in my shoulders, therefore I'm tense. What's that tension around? And it really promotes that ability to be a passive observer of ourselves through the senses, rather than being overwhelmed like we might in some other quadrants of our hot cross bun. Quick disclaimer that there are some people who might find the sensations that are going on, again, too intense. We may have sensory processing disorder and things are really loud. It may be that we have a condition with chronic pain and we're actually looking to acknowledge that, but also to move away from it. I experience a chronic ringing in the ears, tinnitus, and sometimes if you pay attention to the sense of ringing, it can actually be a bit over the top. Whereas for me, with my own tinnitus, I more treat it as a level that's loud. It makes me think, okay, I probably need some self-care, chance to focus on myself as a whole and to let this ringing get a bit quieter. So let's pause for the penultimate time and ask ourselves, what sensations are going on in the body? Might be, what are we sensing around us? What are we sensing within the body? But also if there's anything that the body's trying to say to us, maybe a soreness, a pain, a sense of a nagging something. Can we pay attention to that? And then when we pay attention to it, can we gain any kind of insight into how we are through it? So that's it. That's the hot crossed bun method of looking at different aspects of our experience in order to check in how we really are. Really, we're not split into quadrants. We are more like a regular bun of everything mixed together. But use each of those different things, thoughts, feelings, sensations and behaviour, to have moments to check in with yourself, to look at different aspects and to be able to ask yourself on this final check-in, how are you? I'm a person-centred counsellor based either online or face-to-face in Oxford. If you would like to meet with somebody else to really get in touch with your experiencing, sometimes having another individual there with you, someone who is there with their experience, can help us to grow deeper, and I would love to journey with you. You can find out more about me on my website at www.simonslistening.co.uk, and also please very much feel free to check out some of the other videos on this channel. There are lots and lots of shorts on just little reflections, and often those reflections come from me checking in with what's going on for me, my thoughts, my feelings, how I'm behaving that confuses me, sensations that are happening. And then I've got some longer videos that talk a bit more depth into specific content on things like addiction, video gaming, bereavement, issues that might happen in Oxford. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you for maybe even pausing or taking a moment to check in with yourself. And I really hope that this has equipped you to be able to, when someone asks or when you ask yourself, know how you are.